Admiral Graf Spee was a Deutschland-class heavy cruiser which served with the Kriegsmarine of Nazi Germany during World War II. The vessel was named after Admiral Maximilian von Spee, commander of the East Asia Squadron that fought the battles of Coronel and the Falkland Islands, where he was killed in action, in World War I. She was laid down at the Reichsmarinewerft shipyard in Wilhelmshaven in October 1932 and completed by January 1936. The ship was nominally under the 10,000 long tons limitation on warship size imposed by the Treaty of Versailles, though with a full load displacement of 16,020 long tons, she significantly exceeded it. Armed with 6 28 cm guns in 2 triple-gun turrets, Admiral Graf Spee and her sisters were designed to outgun any cruiser fast enough to catch them. Their top speed of 28 knots left only a handful of ships in the Anglo-French navies able to catch them and powerful enough to sink them. The ship conducted 5 non-intervention patrols during the Spanish Civil War in 1936–1938, and participated in the Coronation Review for King George Virgin Islands U.S. in May 1937. Admiral Graf Spee was deployed to the South Atlantic in the weeks before the outbreak of World War II, to be positioned in merchant sea lanes once war was declared. Between September and December 1939, the ship sank 9 ships totaling 50,089 gross register tons, before being confronted by 3 British cruisers at the Battle of the River Plate on December 13. Admiral Graf Spee inflicted heavy damage on the British ships, but she too was damaged, and was forced to put into port at Montevideo. Convinced by false reports of superior British naval forces approaching his ship, Hans Langstaff, the commander of the ship, ordered the vessel to be scuttled. The ship was partially broken up in situ, though part of the ship remains visible above the surface of the water. Design: Admiral Graf Spee was 186 meters long overall and had a beam of 21.65 m and a maximum draft of 7.34 m. The ship had a design displacement of 14,890 t and a full load displacement of 16,020 long tons, though the ship was officially stated to be within the 10,000 long tons limit of the Treaty of Versailles. Admiral Graf Spee was powered by 4 sets of MAN 9-cylinder double-acting 2-stroke diesel engines. The ship's top speed was 28.5 knots, at 54,000 shaft horsepower. At a cruising speed of 18.69 knots, the ship had a range of 16,300 nautical miles. As designed, her standard complement consisted of 33 officers and 586 enlisted men, though after 1935 this was significantly increased to 30 officers and 921 1,040 sailors. Admiral Graf Spee Euro-S primary armament was 6 28 cm SKC/28 guns mounted in 2 triple-gun turrets, 1 forward and 1 aft of the superstructure. The ship carried a secondary battery of 8 15 cm SKC/28 guns in single turrets grouped amidships. Her anti-aircraft battery originally consisted of 3 8.8 cm L/45 guns, though in 1935 these were replaced with 6 8.8 cm L/78 guns. In 1938, the 8.8 cm guns were removed, and 6 10.5 cm L/65 guns, 4 3.7 cm guns, and 10 2 cm guns were installed in their place. The ship also carried a pair of quadruple 53.3 cm deck-mounted torpedo launchers placed on her stern. The ship was equipped with 2 Aradoa 196 seaplanes and 1 catapult. Admiral Graf Spee Euro-S armored belt was 60 to 80 mm thick. Her upper deck was 17 mm thick while the main armor deck was 17 to 45 mm thick. The main battery turrets had 140 mm thick faces and 80 mm thick sides. Radar consisted of a FMGG, GO, C-TACT set. Admiral Graf Spee was the first German warship to be equipped with radar equipment. Service history: Admiral Graf Spee was ordered by the Reichsmarine from the Reichsmarinewerft shipyard in Wilhelmshaven. Ordered as Ersatz Braunschweig, Admiral Graf Spee replaced the reserve battleship Braunschweig. Her keel was laid on October 1, 1932, under construction number 125. The ship was launched on June 30, 1934. At her launching, she was christened by the daughter of Admiral Maximilian von Spee, the ship's namesake. She was completed slightly over a year and a half later on January 6, 1936, the day she was commissioned into the German fleet. Admiral Graf Spee spent the first 3 months of her career conducting extensive sea trials to ready the ship for service. The ship's first commander was Kapiter Currency Zur See Konrad Porzig. He was replaced in 1937 by KZS Walter Wartzecker. After joining the fleet, Admiral Graf Spee became the flagship of the German Navy. In the summer of 1936, following the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War, she deployed to the Atlantic to participate in non-intervention patrols off the Republican-held coast of Spain. Between August 1936 and May 1937, the ship conducted 3 patrols off Spain. On the return voyage from Spain, Admiral Graf Spee stopped in Great Britain to represent Germany in the Coronation Review at Spithead for King George Virgin Islands, U.S. on May 20. After the conclusion of the review, Admiral Graf Spee returned to Spain for a 4th non-intervention patrol. Following fleet maneuvers and a brief visit to Sweden, the ship conducted a 5th and final patrol in February 1938. In 1938, KZS Hans Langstuff took command of the vessel. She conducted a series of goodwill visits to various foreign ports throughout the year. These included cruises into the Atlantic, where she stopped in Tangier and Vigo. She also participated in extensive fleet maneuvers in German waters. She was part of the celebrations for the reintegration of the port of Memel into Germany, and a fleet review in honor of Admiral Mikla Kubed S. Horthy, the Regent of Hungary. Between April 18 and May 17, 1939, she conducted another cruise into the Atlantic, stopping in the ports of Ceuta and Lisbon. On August 21, 1939, Admiral Graf Spee departed Wilhelmshaven, bound for the South Atlantic. World War II. Following the outbreak of war between Germany and the Allies in September 1939, Adolf Hitler ordered the German Navy to begin commerce raiding against Allied merchant traffic. Hitler nevertheless delayed issuing the order until it became clear that Britain would not countenance a peace treaty following the conquest of Poland. The Admiral Graf Spee was instructed to strictly adhere to prize rules, which required raiders to stop and search ships for contraband before sinking them, and to ensure that their crews are safely evacuated. Langstuff was ordered to avoid combat, even with inferior opponents, and to frequently change position. On September 1, the cruiser rendezvoused with her supply ship Altmark southwest of the Canary Islands. While replenishing his fuel supplies, Langstuff ordered superfluous equipment transferred to the Altmark. This included several of the ship's boats, flammable paint, and 2 of her 10-2 cm anti-aircraft guns, which were installed on the tanker. On September 11, while still transferring supplies from Altmark, Admiral Graf Spee a US Arado Float plane spotted the British heavy cruiser HMS Cumberland approaching the 2 German ships. Langstuff ordered the 2 ships to depart at high speed, successfully evading the British cruiser. On September 26, the ship finally received orders authorizing attacks on Allied merchant shipping. 4 days later Admiral Graf Spee a US Arado located Booth Steamship Company's cargo ship Clement off the coast of Brazil. The cargo ship transmitted an Aurora signal before the cruiser ordered her to stop. Admiral Graf Spee took Clemente US master and chief engineer prisoner but led the rest of her crew to abandon ship in the lifeboats. The cruiser then fired 30 rounds from her 28 cm and 15 cm guns and 2 torpedoes at the cargo ship, which broke up and sank. Langstuff ordered a distress signal sent to the naval station in Pernambuco to ensure the rescue of the ship's crew. The British Admiralty immediately issued a warning to merchant shipping that a German surface raider was in the area. The British crew later reached the Brazilian coast in their lifeboats. On October 5, the British and French navies formed 8 groups to hunt down Admiral Graf Spee in the South Atlantic. The British aircraft carriers HMS Hermes, Eagle, and Ark Royal, the French aircraft carrier Bar Copyright Arne, the British battler cruiser Renown, and French battleships Dunkirk and Strasbourg, and 16 cruisers were committed to the hunt. Force G, commanded by Commodore Henry Harwood and assigned to the east coast of South America, comprised the cruisers Cumberland and Exeter. Force G was reinforced by the light cruisers Ajax and Achilles. Harwood detached Cumberland to patrol the area off the Falkland Islands while his other 3 cruisers patrolled off the River Plate. On the same day as the formation of the Anglo-French hunter groups, Admiral Graf Spee captured the steamer Newton Beach. 2 days later, she encountered and sank the merchant ship Ashleigh. On October 8, the following day, she sank Newton Beach, which Langstaff had been using to house prisoners. Newton Beach was too slow to keep up with Admiral Graf Spee, and so the prisoners were transferred to the cruiser. On October 10, she captured the steamer Huntsman, the captain of which had not sent a distress signal until the last minute, as he had mistakenly identified Admiral Graf Spee as a French warship. Unable to accommodate the crew from Huntsman, Admiral Graf Spee sent the ship to a rendezvous location with a prize crew. On October 15, Admiral Graf Spee rendezvoused with Altmark to refuel and transfer prisoners. The following morning, the prize Huntsman joined the 2 ships. The prisoners aboard Huntsman were transferred to Altmark and Langstaff then sank Huntsman on the night of October 17. On October 22, Admiral Graf Spee encountered and sank the steamer Travanian. At the end of October, Langstaff sailed his ship into the Indian Ocean south of Madagascar. The purpose of that foray was to divert Allied warships away from the South Atlantic, and to confuse the Allies about his intentions. By this time, Admiral Graf Spee had cruised for almost 30,000 nautical miles and was in dire need of an engine overhaul. On November 15, the ship sank the tanker Africa Shell, and the following day, she stopped an unidentified Dutch steamer, though did not sink her. Admiral Graf Spee returned to the Atlantic between 17 and 26 November to refuel from Altmark. While replenishing supplies, the crew of Admiral Graf Spee built a dummy gun turret on her bridge and erected a dummy second funnel behind the aircraft catapult to alter her silhouette significantly in a bid to confuse Allied shipping as to her true identity. Admiral Graf Spee a US Aerodofloat plane located the merchant ship Doric Star. Langstaff fired a shot across her bow to stop the ship. Doric Star was able to send out a distress signal before she was sunk, which prompted Harwood to take his 3 cruisers to the mouth of the River Plate, which he estimated would be Langstaff's next target. On the night of December 5, Admiral Graf Spee sank the steamer Tyro. The next day, she met with Altmark and transferred 140 prisoners from Doric Star and Tyro. Admiral Graf Spee encountered her last victim on the evening of December 7, the freighter Strione Shal. The prize crew recovered secret documents containing shipping route information. Based on that information, Langstaff decided to head for the seas off Montevideo. On December 11, the ship's aerodo broke down and could not be repaired, and so it was discarded overboard. The ship's disguise was also removed, in the event that it might hinder the ship in battle. Battle of the River Plate. At 5:30 on the morning of December 13, 1939, Lookout spotted a pair of masts off the ship's starboard bow. Langstaff assumed this to be the escort for a convoy mentioned in the documents recovered from Tyro. At 5:52, however, the ship was identified as HMS Exeter. She was accompanied by a pair of smaller warships, initially thought to be destroyers but quickly identified as Leander-class cruisers. Langstaff decided not to flee from the British ships, and so ordered his ship to battle stations and to close at maximum speed. At 6:08, the British spotted Admiral Graf Spee. Commodore Harwood divided his forces up to split the fire of Admiral Graf Spee a US 28 cm guns. The German ship opened fire with her main battery at Exeter and her secondary guns at the flagship Ajax at 6:17. At 6:20, Exeter returned fire, followed by Ajax at 6:21 and Achilles at 6:24. In the span of 30 minutes, Admiral Graf Spee had hit Exeter 3 times, disabling her 2 forward turrets, destroying her bridge and her aircraft catapult, and starting major fires. Ajax and Achilles moved closer to Admiral Graf Spee to relieve the pressure on Exeter. Langstaff thought the two light cruisers were making a torpedo attack, and turned away under a smoke screen. The respite allowed Exeter to withdraw from the action. By now, only one of her gun turrets was still in action, and she had suffered 61 dead and 23 wounded crew members. At around 07:00, Exeter returned to the engagement, firing from her stern turret. Admiral Graf Spee fired on her again, scored more hits, and forced Exeter to withdraw again, this time with a Liz to port. At 7:25, Admiral Graf Spee scored a hit on Ajax that disabled her aft turrets. Both sides broke off the action, Admiral Graf Spee retreating into the River Plate estuary, while Harwood's battered cruisers remained outside to observe any possible breakout attempts. In the course of the engagement, Admiral Graf Spee had been hit approximately 70 times. 36 men were killed and 60 more were wounded, including Langstaff, who had been wounded twice by splinters while standing on the open bridge. Scuttling. As a result of battle damage and casualties, Langstaff decided to put into Montevideo, where repairs could be effected and the wounded men could be evacuated from the ship. Most of the hits scored by the British cruisers caused only minor structural and superficial damage, but the oil purification plant, which was required to prepare the diesel fuel for the engines, was destroyed. Her desalination plant and galley were also destroyed, which would have increased the difficulty of a return to Germany. A hit in the bow would also have negatively affected her seaworthiness in the heavy seas of the North Atlantic. Admiral Graf Spee had fired much of her ammunition in the engagement with Harwood's cruisers. After arriving in port, the wounded crewmen were taken to local hospitals and the dead were buried with full military honors. Captive Allied seamen still aboard the ship were released. Repairs necessary to make the ship seaworthy were expected to take up to 2 weeks. British naval intelligence worked to convince Langstaff that vastly superior forces were concentrating to destroy his ship if he attempted to break out of the harbour. The Admiralty broadcast a series of signals, on frequencies known to be intercepted by German intelligence. The closest heavy units the carrier Ark Royal and battler cruiser Renown were some 2,500 mi away, much too far to intervene in the situation. Believing the British reports, Langstaff discussed his options with commanders in Berlin, which were either to break out and seek refuge in Buenos Aires, where the Argentine government would intern the ship, or to scuttle the ship in the Plate estuary. Langstaff was unwilling to risk the lives of his crew, so he decided to scuttle the ship. He knew that although Uruguay was neutral, the government was on friendly terms with Britain, and if he allowed his ship to be interned, the Uruguayan Navy would allow British intelligence officers access to the ship. Under Article 17 of the Hague Convention, neutrality restrictions limited Admiral Graf Spee to a period of 72 hours for repairs in Montevideo, before she would be interned for the duration of the war. On December 17, 1939, Langstaff ordered the destruction of all important equipment aboard the ship. The ship's remaining ammunition supply was dispersed throughout the ship, in preparation for scuttling. On December 18, the ship, with only Langstaff and 40 other men aboard, moved into the outer roadstead to be scuttled. A crowd of 20,000 watched as the scuttling charges were set. The crew was taken off by an Argentine tug and the ship was scuttled at 20:55. The multiple explosions from the munitions sent jets of flame high into the air and created a large cloud of smoke that obscured the ship, which burned in the shallow water for the next 2 days. On December 20, in his room in a Buenos Aires hotel, Langstaff shot himself in full dress uniform and lying on the ship's battle ensign. In late January 1940, the neutral American cruiser USS Helena arrived in Montevideo and the crew was permitted to visit the wreck of Admiral Graf Spee. The Americans met the German crewmen, who were still in Montevideo. In the aftermath of the scuttling, the ship's crew were taken to Argentina, where they were interned for the remainder of the war. Wreck. The wreck was partially broken up in situ in 1942–1943, though parts of the ship are still visible. The wreck lies at a depth of only 11 m. The salvage rights were purchased from the German government by the British, for £14,000, using a Montevideo engineering company as a front. The British had been surprised by the accuracy of the shooting and expected to find a radar rangefinder and were not disappointed. They used the knowledge thus acquired to try to develop countermeasures, under the leadership of Fred Hoyle at the British Radar Project. The Admiralty complained about the large sum paid for this salvage rights. In February 2004, a salvage team began work raising the wreck of Admiral Graf Spee. The operation was in part being funded by the government of Uruguay, in part by the private sector as the wreck was a hazard to navigation. The first major section a 27 metric tons gunnery range-finding telemeter was raised on February 25. On February 10, 2006, the 2 400 kg eagle and swastika crest of Admiral Graf Spee was recovered from the stern of the ship. It was stored in a Uruguayan naval warehouse following German complaints about exhibiting Nazi paraphernalia. Footnotes. Notes. Citations. References. Beidling-Mayer, Gerard. K.M. Admiral Graf Spee. Warship Profile 4. Windsor, England, Profile Publications pages 73 €96. OCLC 20229321. Bonner, Kermit. Final Voyages. Paducah, Kentucky, Turner Publishing Company. ISBN 978-56311-289-8. Divers recover piece of Graf Spee. BBC News February 26, 2004. Retrieved February 10, 2008. Gardner, Robert. Chesno, Roger, eds. Conway's All the World's Fighting Ships, 1922 1946. Annapolis, Naval Institute Press. ISBN 978-0-87021-913-9. Graf Spee's Eagle rises from deep. BBC News February 10, 2006. Retrieved February 10, 2008. Gra Paragraph Nair, Eric. German Warships, 1815 1945. Annapolis, Naval Institute Press. ISBN 978-0-87021-790-6. Jackson, Robert, ed. Kriegsmarine, The Illustrated History of the German Navy in WWII. Osceola, Wisconsin, MBI Publishing Company. ISBN 978-0-7603-1026-7. Koop, Gerard. Schmalk, Klaus-Peter. Pocket Battleships of the Deutschland-class, Deutschland-La 1 Quartet Zoo, Admiral Scheer, Admiral Graf Spee. Barnsley, Sayer 4th Publishing. ISBN 9781848321960. Pope, Dudley. The Battle of the River Plate, The Hunt for the German Pocket Battleship Graf Spee. Ithaca, New York, McBooks Press. ISBN 978-1-59013-096-4. Roa, Jar 1 Quarter Gen. Chronology of the War at Sea, 1939 1945, The Naval History of World War II. Annapolis, U.S. Naval Institute Press. ISBN 978-59114-119-8. Slader, John. The Red Duster at War. London, William Kimber and Company Limited pages 25 26. ISBN 0-7183-0679-1. What should Uruguay do with its Nazi Eagle? BBC News December 15, 2014. Retrieved December 15, 2014. Whitley, M.J. Battleships of World War II. Annapolis, Naval Institute Press. ISBN 978-55750-184-4. Williamson, Gordon. German Pocket Battleships 1939 1945. Oxford, Osprey Publishing. ISBN 978-1-84176-501-3. Further reading, Whitley, M.J. German Capital Ships of World War II. London, Cassell and Company. ISBN 0-304-35707-3.